Ruto is operating from the altar of the Freemasons. That is State House.
We recently had an interview with Apostle Ndura Waruingi, who revealed to us how the government is being ran by demonic forces. According to Ndura Waruingi, he says some of these demonic forces have been having legality in this nation because of the structures found within our cities, especially the Kenyatta International Convention Center, KICC, a structure that was constructed with the inspiration of a donkey's penis.
KICC, it was the architectural plan of the KICC, it is a penis of a donkey.
Ndura Waruingi believes that since this structure was inspired by a donkey's penis, KICC has been playing a pivotal role in spreading sexual immorality within the city.
It's a penis of a donkey, yeah. And it was constructed knowingly that I'm building a penis of a donkey. That is a spirit of immorality that was planted at the middle, at the heart of this country.
Why? Because it is a demonic porthole in Nairobi city. But did you know that there are different ways where we can create demonic potholes unknowingly? Let me give you my own experience with demons that Ndura Waruingi addressed in our recent interview. Now the story begins while I was in, I think 2020. At that time, it was around 3 a.m. and I was getting ready to go to bed. As I laid on my bed, what happened next? My spirit left my body, and my body laid on that bed. My spirit immediately was taken into a camp that I could notice different activities. And this camp, I could also notice lights from afar. It was quite dark in this camp. Now, something that caught my attention is that the people who were in this camp, they were not fully human. Their bodies were made up of, upper body were made up of humans, but from their lower body, from the waist going down to the toes, they were made up of reptiles. And I could see that these demons, or rather these humanoid species, they were very busy in this particular camp. And I was immediately taken into a different place in the same camp where I saw the same humanoid species seated in a circle, and they were making decisions. And one of those decisions, or rather the discussions they were making, they were discussing on how they will attack Nairobi. And they concluded that they can attack Nairobi easily through sexual immorality. And one of those humanoid species, let me call them demons, said, how will you attack them using sexual immorality without their consent? And a response came between these demons saying, let us use food to trap them. Once this demon uttered that word, my spirit came back to my body. That vision really troubled me, even though I had been having such experiences before, but that particular vision troubled me. So I started looking for an interpretation of the vision. By God's grace, I found an interpretation of the vision. And this is what this vision meant that will scare you. Ladies out there, have you ever asked yourself why a man has to give you food first before they take you to bed? In fact, if you're a woman and you lost your virginity out of marriage, did you discover that before this man took away this precious flower from you, they had to give you food and you gave in? In fact, to make it even serious, have you discovered that this particular sin that you normally struggle with was as a result of you dining with a person who commits the same sin? And eventually, somehow, you found yourself committing the same sin with the person who you dined with. Well, this is because food is so spiritual than it is physical, if you never noticed that. In fact, food is so spiritual to an extent that one of the names given to God is food. He is called the bread of life. Food is so spiritual to an extent that the fall of man was as a result of food. Study the Bible in the book of Genesis. The Bible records saying that Eve saw the tree was good for food. And once Eve and Adam ate of this tree, they all fell into sin. And that's how the human race fell into sin. In fact, if you study the Bible extensively, you'll find out that where food is involved, destinies are exchanged. For instance, the story between Esau and Jacob. These were two brothers. And we see Esau selling his birthright to Jacob through food. When Jacob gave Esau food, Esau sold his birthright to him. And shockingly, we don't see any papers being signed. We don't see any lawyer being present as a witness. But once Esau ate of this food offered to him by Jacob, his birthright was sold to him, to Jacob immediately. And the repercussion of all these, we see Esau coming up with a nation called Edom. But eventually this nation comes to an abrupt end, according to the book of Obadiah. And we see Jacob coming up with a nation called Israel. And up to now we hear of a nation called Israel, but we don't hear of a nation called Edom. Probably if Esau never ate of this food offered to him by Jacob, would be having a nation called Edom. But so sad. If you also study the Bible keenly, you'll find out that if you dine with a person, most likely you will start agreeing with this person and you will develop the character and nature of this person. A good example is in the book of 1 Kings chapter 17, where Elijah meets this widow who had given up in life. This widow had planned to eat her last meal and die. For instance, let me read for you that verse. It is in the book of 1 Kings chapter 17. And this is what the Bible says. In 1 Kings chapter 17.
As surely as the Lord your God lives. She replied, I don't have any bread, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I am gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die.
You see, she had already given up in life, and all she wanted is just to eat and die. Now after 1 Kings chapter 17, we go to 1 Kings chapter 19. For the first time in the vocabulary of Elijah, he starts contemplating death the same way this woman was contemplating death. If you read the book of 1 Kings chapter 19, you would see Elijah telling God,
While he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, he came to a broom bush, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. I had enough, Lord. He said, Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors. Then he lay down under the bush and fell asleep.
Was it by coincidence that Elijah started thinking about death the moment he ate from this woman's house, who was also thinking about death? Was it by coincidence? That is how food is very spiritual. You kind of develop the character and nature of the person who has offered you food. The reason why you and your family are close together, the reason why you speak the same language, is because you normally dine together. Have you discovered that? If you also study the Bible extensively, you'll find out that the Bible is warning us against eating anyhowly, gluttonous. In the book of Proverbs, you will see the Bible telling us this. In the book of Proverbs, let me get you that verse. In the book of Proverbs, chapter 23, this is what the Bible says about people who cannot control their appetites. When you sit down to eat with a ruler, consider carefully what is before you and put a knife to your throat. If you possess a large appetite, do not crave the ruler's delicacies, for that food is deceptive. You see, when you are before rulers, observe what is brought to you in the form of food. If you're a man led of great appetite, once you eat of this food, you will start thinking and reasoning like this ruler. This explains to you why in every meeting that consists of decision making, food has to be involved. Why? Because this meeting, the people who attend this meeting, they have to think likewise. Because food unites people. Am I making sense? That's why you would see when the president is calling up for a meeting, food must be involved, by the way. Why? Because when food is involved, people reason likewise. And this is a strategy that King Nebuchadnezzar used to use when he goes into a foreign land and captures slaves. When he went to Israel and captured the likes of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, after he brought them to Babylon, we see Nebuchadnezzar trying to offer them food. Why? Because he was trying to usher them into his mentality, thinking of faculty, so that they may reason like him. And they start associating himself with them. But we eventually see Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refusing to eat what they had been offered by Nebuchadnezzar. They said, we cannot eat and defile ourselves, because they understood this secret that once they start eating with this guy, they will eventually become like this guy. Now this explains to you why, if you are a woman out there, once a man takes you out for a date and this man tells you, let's go home, it normally becomes hard for a woman to say no. Why? Because this food has already captured you. It becomes hard for you to say no. This explains to you why, once this man takes you on a date, it becomes easy for you to pull down your pants for him, by the way. I hope I'm making sense. I hope I'm answering some of your questions. Now, these demons that I saw in my visions discovered the only way to trap men so that they may commit sexual immorality is through food. So you'll find a man coming with food, taking you out on a date, and once they allow you, maybe for a date, you eat together, and eventually you go bed together, and the cycle grows here and there. And that's how sexual immorality is spread all over uncontrollably. Why? Because since you have eaten with this person who has a corrupt nature, you become corrupt like him, and then you start behaving like him, and eventually you start doing the same things this person does. If this guy is a cheat, unaanza kucheat around, and that's how sexual immorality spreads. I hope I've answered your question. Anyway, what are your thoughts? Leave your thoughts on our comment section. That is it for now. Thanks for watching. Kama kawaida, I have been your favorite host, Chief Okuzo. Bye-bye.